as well as the other platforms. So I'm James Flippin. Thanks a lot for joining us. Good to be back on the live stream after a big Knicks win. How about that? I mean, that was such a crazy comeback. I was totally more or less moving on, thinking, all right, tonight's just a total wash from a sports perspective. The Mets sucked, looked like they were going to play well, and then Nolan McLean totally let me down. The Knicks at the very opposite end of the spectrum just blew the doors off the Cavs at the closing moments, down by 20 points with like 7 minutes to play. Absolutely insane. Really a nice switch up on the evening, and I'll take it. I'll take it, no question about it. Now, I have to say, there's a part of me that wonders if I'm even on the right TikTok right now. This whole thing is fucking weird. Um, I don't really know still how to get the whole stream key thing, so it's not all centered in one particular place. But at the very least, I feel like we're live somewhere. So, wanted to talk about this whole situation that I ran into today with New Jersey Transit because so much of the stuff I've been doing recently on TikTok Live has been about LIRR and the strike that happened and then is over now. And, just kind of really feeling like that whole situation's a complete disgrace, right? The fact that you have a public utility and its workers able to strike makes no sense to me at all. I don't even think they should really be allowed to unionize. But certainly when they strike, it just takes it to a point where it's like beyond unacceptable. And I experienced today New Jersey Transit totally letting me down, where the train that I was going to take was delayed. Not necessarily the most shocking thing in the world, but there was no explanation. No explanation on social media, on the video boards there, no sort of deeper explanation as to what could have been happening. Oh, this train is delayed because of X, Y, and Z. Oh, this train is likely to happen this way or, happen later because of the cancellation, whatever. Nothing of that nature. So I was looking on the New Jersey Transit specific line account and hoping that there would be some sort of an update. And as I decided to take this other line to get home, I'm seeing the updates coming in. And it's like 15 minutes late, 30 minutes late, saying that this is the reason why this train is this, that. And I think to myself, somebody is paid to actually update that social media account. Somebody is actually supposed to be making it their job to update people as they struggle to get home, whatever's happening with that particular train line. Could they be bothered to do it today? No, they couldn't. And it's those kind of things that really create friction between the employees of these transit agencies and the consumers, the commuters that deal with it every day. Because all it takes is for somebody to just say, you know what, a train broke down in Elizabeth. Unfortunately, the one you're waiting for isn't going to be able to get there as a result. We've got to handle a situation. And here's the other big problem I have with New Jersey Transit. There were about four, at least three trains on the Green Line, I think it's the Gladstone branch, that popped off within like a 5, 10, 15-minute period after all these delays they'd had. And meanwhile, the Montclair line doesn't have one for like an hour and 45 minutes. How can that be possible? Like, how can you not figure out that one of these trains has to get reassigned from the line that is having four trains run in the span of about 15 or 20 minutes when this other train line has zero? That doesn't seem like rocket science to me. That seems like something that a pretty simple computer program should be able to figure out, if not the least a human. All right, got that off my chest when it comes to New Jersey Transit and, the Long Island Railroad thing that is now over is still pretty annoying, to be honest with you, because the whole fight and the whole strike happened because the union wanted 5% raise in the final year of the contract and the MTA only wanted to do a 3% raise. So it seemed to make all the sense in the world that they were just going to settle at 4 and avoid the strike because the thing had been in the offing for about months now, if not maybe even close to a year. And yet the MTA caved and gave them 4.5%. And it's like, this is what we went through this all for? 0.5%. And again, if you've seen any of my stuff on TikTok, you know that I'm not pro union in this case. I'm definitely not pro MTA either, but it's like, really? That's what this was all for? Kind of disappointing. And not to say the least of which, just having a strike in the first place should not be allowed when you're a public utility in New York. The Taylor Act exists for a reason. And it's kind of interesting. I did a video about this where the reason the LIRR workers are allowed to strike at all is because once upon a time, that agency moved freight in between states. So that meant that they were part of interstate commerce, and you couldn't just have them subject to single state laws. And the Federal Railroad Act allows for that, striking. So anyway, hopefully there will not be any more of those anytime soon. On the political side, it turned out that the MAGA was more powerful than the Massey. The Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massey, down in the primary. He's out. He's going to be replaced by this guy if the Republican wins, Gallrein, and Ed Gallrein, I think his name is, the Trump-endorsed guy. Also, Trump endorsed this guy for Congress, Andy Rupp, I believe his name is. He's going to most likely win in that election. So a big night for MAGA when it comes to the way Republican Party is kind of moving away from these establishment guys. And whatever it is that a Thomas Massey thinks that he's doing with like his focus on the Epstein files or whatever, I mean, more power to you, especially if you figure out something big and significant as a result of those investigations. But the whole anti-Trump thing, not a winning strategy from a Republican politician perspective. All right, so that's what's going on with Thomas Massey. That's what's going on with the world of politics. Although I could also talk about this. There was this video regarding not the Massey one, but the endorsement of Trump for Paxton in the Senate race in Texas. And by the way, let me just apologize for being so completely shot right now. I've been working since 9 o'clock in the morning. My coworker got injured, so I had to step in and handle all the different newses for the night and stuff. My eyes are rolling in the back of my head. And not only that, but I am going to be officiating my brother-in-law's wedding on Friday. So I've been practicing that. Want to nail that, obviously, and feel like there's a lot of pressure on me as somebody who speaks for a living to do a nice job. So don't want to trip over my words, don't want to maintain the eye contact the whole time. You know, I feel like I'm being held to especially high standards when it comes to my ability to officiate a wedding. So that'll be Friday, and the rehearsal day is on Thursday. No, well, I was going to say tomorrow. It's after midnight, so I still have Wednesday to get through, and then the rehearsal dinner, and we go forward from there. But yeah, in terms of the Paxton endorsement for Trump, you know, John Toon was working hard to get that endorsement for Cornyn, Cornyn, who's the incumbent senator, but Trump went for Paxton. And this guy, John Toon, is kind of a lightweight because there's really no reason why the SAVE Act shouldn't be passed at this point, for certain put up for a vote. And that's because pretty much everybody wants federal voter ID. Democrats and Republicans. I mean, Democrats in the public eye can't admit that. It's kind of like, I'm trying to think of, kind of like how 10, 15 years ago, even if Republicans really were deep down against illegal immigration, they were worried about the more neocon, pro-illegal immigration used in labor contexts side of things. So they couldn't come out really hard against the illegal immigration. Shout to Leroy Watkins, by the way. Appreciate you being on the stream, and I will say what's up to Dominic. This shooting out in San Diego, California, obviously terrible, right? Any kind of violence at a school, it just is the enduring reality and nightmare that we kind of live with in the U.S. at this point. But some bizarre things in regards to that shooting that should be noted. One is that the couple or the two people that were involved in this shooting, there's some reporting out there that they may have been transgender. There's also reporting that some of their manifesto writings or whatever are not really taking sides in the whole traditional political side, but just kind of bending completely Nazi, right? Like, oh, wow, okay, yeah, we really love the whole Nazi thing, Hitler's symbols and all this kind of stuff. So potentially trans, potentially Nazi. I don't know what's going on. I think the one shooter said that they were definitely anti-Trump. Just weird, right? Then there's this. This is the one that really messes with me because I just wanted there at least to be some angle of the story that I could kind of gravitate towards and say, okay, excuse me, I understand that. That makes sense to me. The security guard who jumped in and also died, hailed as a hero by local authorities because he saved kids and all this stuff. So obviously that's good. Saved teachers as well. But now there's Facebook posts coming out where this guy was like a radical anti-Jewish guy. Jihadi, whatever. I'm not going to sit here in my chair in New Jersey and tell you that I have all the time in the world. What did I say to you? I've been working since 9 o'clock in the morning. That I have all the time in the world to track down these leads. Is that a real Facebook post? Any of this stuff? But, you know, there is credible reporting out there about what this mosque is all about. And that there is some kind of questionable support for some of the more terrorist stuff with this mosque. So, I don't know. It's brutal no matter which way you slice it. The violence and the threat of violence and kids involved and teachers, and it's too much after a while. Speaking of this, things that are just too much. Did you see this manhole story out of New York? Absolutely horrific. This woman in her 50s, who's a mom and a grandmother, she fell into a manhole in Midtown Manhattan that some big truck, I guess, had ripped the manhole cover off of, probably not that long beforehand. And she parks her car, steps out, boom, right down the manhole. And she didn't die from the fall because it was only about 10 feet, but the steam down there is what killed her. I mean, that is just absolutely horrific. And frankly, the kind of story that I almost like wish I hadn't heard in the first place, because it's just, man, I mean, you talk about subways and random assaults and all this kind of thing, and the kind of thing you're always worried about. We had some soundbite from earlier in the day when people were like, well, you know, you really got to get off your phone. You got to watch where you're going. That's not what happened to this lady. The damn manhole cover was ripped right off in the middle of the street. No safety cones, no little barriers or anything, that just right down there. Totally crazy. This post on social media absolutely fascinated me. A Norwegian neuroscientist spent 20 years proving that the act of writing by hand changes the human ways in ways that typing physically cannot. And almost nobody outside of her field is really focused on her paper. Her name is Audrey Vandermeer. This makes so much sense to me, and yet it's also kind of troubling, the implication, because I know for me, when I was younger, I always felt like writing things down was almost one of the most effective study things that I had. Writing down notes or rewriting notes, or, you know, kind of reading something in the book and then writing it down and all that, taking those kind of thoughts and putting them to paper, actual paper with a pen, made a huge difference for me. Now, I'd like to think that there's certain instances where if I'm prepping for a show or if I'm working on something else and I write it down digitally, typing it out, I think that has a similar effect for me. But it's just interesting to note that this particular neuroscientist, who you think would have a thought and have an idea about it, seems to feel like it is a really big deal. Now, this is where they're looking at actual brain scans, so it's not even something where it's like just based off her observations. Her or his? Audrey Vandermeer. Okay, so. But they did brain scans, and when people are writing on paper, the parts of the brain are lighting up. Now, see, this is talking about children, and this is where it kind of makes all the more sense to me, because I think it's something about that developmental brain that we really don't have anything to compare it to when it talks about, you're talking about writing on tablets or typing something on a tablet versus actually writing something on a piece of paper. Fascinating. And I think that should really be focused on more. We should get back to, oh, there was another post, can't remember if it was within that same post or if it was just the comments down below, where somebody was saying, watch, in the next 25 years, the sort of like privileged elite position will be going to schools where they use paper and pen or pencil, not just the tablet, which feels very dystopian. And they spend so much money in all these different public school districts on technology. Get the next tablet. Got to get the next tablet. Have another tablet. This one's out of date. It's a monster that feeds itself from a speeding perspective. And I know people in IT and in tech, and they'll admit it. They'll be like, yeah, this is where a lot of that spending is going to. And then nobody wants to cut their budgets back, because then that means you're saying, oh, I don't need the money, which, how's that going to look? But, that's what you wish would happen. That's what you would like to see happen from the stewards of the state. Maybe we don't need all these tablets. Maybe we do need just more pencils and paper and writing things down. And look at how it stimulates the brain. Follow the Norwegian research. It was nice to see. Let me just mention again how awesome it was. The Knicks came back last night. Absolutely nuts. I mean, I was working, so I didn't really check the score that much. And then my husband actually had the game off. So I figured, damn, it's really that bad. And I mean, it was. I mean, they were down like 20 points. And I just happened to check it again while I was doing something else in the kitchen, saw that they were kind of whittling it away. And I said, okay, if it gets down to like, I don't know, 5, 6 points, I'll put it on. That's what happened. And then the Knicks came back, and it was just absolutely delightful. But I wanted to mention that again because I thought I would mention Mark Cuban, the former owner of the Dallas Mavericks. And thank you to the Dallas Mavericks for Jalen Brunson. So it's like kind of all interconnected. But it was really good to see Mark Cuban at the White House the other day as part of this whole Trump RX thing. Cuban, for all his annoying ways and hubris, is really doing good things when it comes to trying to lower the cost of prescription drugs in the United States. It's a venture that I think he's undertaking, not necessarily from like a super entrepreneurial side. Maybe he's making money off of it. I honestly don't know. I doubt it. But it's just about trying to help people not have to spend so much for these generic or drugs that you can get in the generic form. And Cuban also apparently hates Trump, or has hated Trump for years. And, it's probably some sort of ego thing between the two of them. But Cuban was there, joined in on the Trump RX thing, laughed when Trump said, oh, he made a mistake, he voted for Kamala, whatever. President Trump is on such a heater right now. It's absolutely really, it's crazy when you think about it. The whole voting, redistricting maps thing, Democrats are going to really struggle with this. I mean, there are a lot of House seats that are no longer going to be going the Democrats' way in these red states, where a lot of the blue states in like the Northeast, they don't have any of these Republican districts that pop up and add to the total number. So that's not good for the Democrats. And furthermore, for the whole anti-Trump movement, you saw what happened tonight with Massey. You saw the other guy in Kentucky who won, Rupp, I think his name is. And, the more MAGA endorsement thing with Paxton also happening yesterday. But more to the point, everywhere you look, if you want to pay attention to such things, and I would advise against it, but some people are into it, the idea is that the approval rating for Trump absolutely stinks, right? Like, he's down 28% approval rating or something. Among who? Like, who are the people that are so anti-Trump? Who are the 8 and 10 who are going to stomp their feet and say, yes, I absolutely think he stinks. He's doing a terrible job. 8 and 10, 80% of the people think so. I really don't agree. I highly doubt it. And they're kind of showing themselves to be totally full of crap with these approval ratings, with the way things are all playing out. This was an interesting social media post. Apparently, a story out of the Telegraph was talking about how the far right has become not so much just the MAGA chads, and the frustrated young men who are moving to the right, but also a lot of attractive and glamorous young women moving more to the right, according to the Telegraph. This is an article published 5 days ago. And a really smart comment from this guy by the name of John Carter online, Martian warlord, but it's spelled in kind of a weird way. He's saying how, look, young guys, and this is like especially true nowadays. This is where, in a weird way, I can't even believe I'm going to say this because I don't even know if I truly believe it, but in a weird way, porn may almost sort of save human civilization because guys can just kind of like chill, right? Play their video games, watch their porn, drink their beer, enjoy the bachelor life, and kind of be okay. But women, as this guy John Carter is pointing out, a lot of their cultural meaning is tied to some of that romance stuff. The movies, the big wedding, the idea of playing house when you're a kid because you're going to have kids someday. That's much more culturally connected to the female experience. So this whole idea that women are just going to increasingly accept being pushed to the left and being told they should care so much about the right to an abortion and all this kind of thing, it's just not, it doesn't jive with cultural reality, right? A lot of women really, they want that family experience. They want to raise kids. They want to have somebody who can be a partner for them. And they don't want to just hate men. So this whole idea that the Telegraph is saying, oh, yeah, the far right is not necessarily anti-women. It's actually kind of increasingly becoming more of an attractive place for women. That is very interesting and also probably true. And something that I think over time is going to continue to have a positive impact on us in the country and hopefully just Western civilization in general. Cars for Kids is done in California. You know, the terrible, awful jingle that we've heard for so many years. Apparently, that charity was run by a guy who was just directing the money only to benefit Jewish kids. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, because this was a decision based out of California where they can't take in the money or generate money for their charity in California, they didn't even have any charitable outreach effort. Like none of the money that was actually coming in was ever going to California, even for Jewish kids, I don't think. So that's pretty wild. And the whole Cars for Kids thing. What's bizarre to me is I thought we did this already with Cars for Kids. I thought we knew it was a scam like 5 years ago. So I don't know. Is that like a Nelson bit? Is that like a Mandela effect thing that I thought that had happened and it just didn't? President Trump going nuts recently, talking a lot about the need to stop mail-in ballots. And I don't know how many people know about this, but France got rid of mail-in ballots back in 1970, whatever, 1970 something, because they said, yeah, you can't secure this. Mail-in voting is not secure. And I mean, of course it's not. So if you really must have it for service members who live in Guam or whatever, and it ends up being in the thousands every year, then I guess it's fine. But you cannot have this widespread vote by mail stuff. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Some women were really being kind of freakish earlier this week outside of the Manhattan courthouse where Luigi Mangioni's evidentiary hearing was being held, as this is the state trial, because Mangione faces both federal and state murder charges in the death of Brian Thompson. And so I guess because the guy's tall, I'm not even trying to be a hater here. Anybody who's new to me and content and what I talk about or whatever, I'm bisexual. So, I mean, I'm qualified to say whether or not I think Mangione is an attractive guy. I don't know. I mean, he's tall, I guess. Is that people that into that? I don't think he's got that attractive of a face. I'm not that into the curly hair Italian fro thing. So I don't know. I don't get it. But a lot of women apparently think he's very attractive. I'm sure guys do also. And so there were these three women who were out in front of the courthouse, and maybe we can actually listen to the audio of it here. Let's see. Ashley Rojas. So she said, I say what I said. I don't give a fuck about him. I think she's talking about Brian Thompson. I don't give a fuck he died. I've definitely seen this particular woman at protests before. Um, so she must be pretty out there because the only people that go to the protests I've ever gone to are just like I don't know if they're the paid variety, but they're just definitely the true believers, you know? His children are better off without him. Ooh, and she says, enjoy the blood money, kids. She's got like a real rage in her face. I don't know how to quite explain it, but it's almost like she knows there's nothing but misery and hate in the comments she's making. There's no place for joy. There's no place for light. And this woman, Ashley Rojas, by the way, wearing a press badge. I mean, look, I'm not even going to try to be holier than thou when it comes to being a member of the press corps, but that's kind of embarrassing that you're out there saying, I don't give an F, the guy died, and you're okay. There's a phrase that's been said many a time. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. I think it should be changed in some ways to hell hath no fury like women who are erroneously told they have a right to be angry. Okay. So if you give a woman this level of oxygen about her having a right to be angry, a right to be furious. Probably anybody who's ever gotten into an argument with their wife or girlfriend could probably even like kind of back this up just on an anecdotal level. If you give an inch on this concept of your right being angry, you have a right to be filled with rage. You have a right to be totally destructive in your rage and feeling of that blackness kind of coursing through your veins. That's a bad look. And it's also a way that kind of you empower these movements of grievance, right? You're a victim. Somebody did something bad to you. Something bad's going to happen to you tomorrow. Something bad's going to happen to your neighbor if you don't do something about it. That is a very powerful drug. And it's something that kind of manifests itself in a lot of these people who want to act like they love Luigi Mangione. And again, maybe they do want to F him or whatever, but it really comes down to them being justified in their anger and rage. And that anger and rage is what they're kind of getting off on. Buried in the news of Long Island Railroad ending its strike and the trains running again is this thing where the hotel union in New York City made a deal where the salary for a housekeeper will be more than $100,000 a year. Now, again, I don't begrudge anybody getting their money. I don't begrudge anybody hustling. I don't begrudge anybody having a job and trying to make a living and make ends meet and retire at an earlier age and buy a house and take vacations and whatever. Good for you. I love that. But this union collective bargaining stuff, man, it just does not rub me the right way. And I'll be the first to admit openly and honestly that I'm in a union. I don't think it's necessarily benefited me a lot because when you work in radio, it's kind of the opposite of the hot new thing. But there are certain things that grant you unquestionable leverage. And trains, for example, they're not making any more tracks. They're not making any more trains. They're only going to have the one line, if you know what I'm saying. So the competition is just not there. Now, you can make the argument that in and of itself, that means you should privatize and maybe offer like 10-year contracts, 15-year contracts, or something like that. But that's not the situation. And the other thing here is if you're paying housekeepers in hotels $100,000 a year, what do you think it's going to do to the cost of the hotels? And how wild is it the percentage of the people that are going to come and stay in those hotels who make less money than the person cleaning it? I mean, again, I understand that it's expensive to live in New York City and that you want to make more money and all this kind of stuff. But on some level, we're kind of like eating ourselves with these collectively bargained positions and all these strange pension agreements that aren't tenable, especially when we kind of know the way those things go, it's very frustrating. But I saw that $100,000 for a housekeeper, that's just not going to work. That's just not going to work, I'm telling you. And then last thing before we go for the night, because I finally have to try to get some rest here before my mother-in-law stays with us for the next few days. That should be interesting. That should be good. No, but I'm excited about officiating my brother-in-law's wedding. It's going to be great. It's the kind of pressure that you kind of like and enjoy, right? If you're in a position where you do talk for a living and things like that. So that'll be good. Friday. And then when it's over, a few drinks, get out on the dance floor. Who doesn't love that, right? Who doesn't love a wedding? But the last thing I wanted to mention was that the war in Iran, without even really getting into the intricacies of Israel and Arab, Israeli, and Persian, and the history of that region, and just, kind of the intricacies of foreign conflict in general. Without getting into all of that, I just want to note that this is an ecological disaster right now. Iran has nowhere to put their oil, so they're just leaking it into the Persian Gulf. Look it up. If you Google it or look it up on X or whatever, you'll see that there are images, undeniable images, like mainstream news outlets reporting on the fact that they're just dumping that oil right into the water, which is terrible, obviously, from an environmental perspective. And it really should be something that has the rest of the world putting pressure on the situation to reach its conclusion. But I don't know how well that's being reported. You still hear a lot of stuff about my colleague at the radio station, Greg Kelly, was saying, making fun of the other news stations that was saying there's still a lot of problems with deliverables, because kind of like that's the hot new buzzword, I guess, when it comes to the fact that the supply chain's been impacted. But how about the fact that the Persian Gulf is getting poisoned with oil? That should be something that actually has people on both sides of the aisle pressuring Iran, Trump, whoever, Pakistan, the other mediators. Let's get something done here, because enough is enough. All right, I'm James Flippin. Really appreciate you joining on the live stream. Please, if you'd like, follow me. Check out future streams. I'm going to try to go live probably this time of night, but probably also earlier. If you're on the East Coast, my apologies for this being so late, but maybe you're like me and you just couldn't sleep. This is where we're going to do a lot of the live streams. I'm also on X. I'm on Facebook. I'm on YouTube, whatever. If you're interested in that stuff, it's all the same content. So check us out on TikTok. Check us out on the other platforms. I'm James Flippin, and I appreciate you guys for joining us this evening. Everybody have a great rest of the night. Heavens now. Very good.